Hey, hey, welcome to Black Girl, Brown Girl, Squirrel, your go-to spot for women of color that are neurodivergent. We're your hosts, Shai and Alexis, two neurodivergent sister friends just trying to figure it all out.
So grab your favorite snack, sit back, relax, and let's squirrel together.
We want to take a moment to acknowledge there are a variety of people who could describe themselves as neurodivergent, and this can include a diverse list of conditions, disorders, etc.
And while our experiences may specifically relate to autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, we hope that all our listeners can feel welcome and relate to the shared experience of being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, because this is our safe space.
Hey, Lex.
Hey, Shai. How are you?
Woo, I'm hanging in there, girl. I'm getting over a bad cold. I guess it's my turn this time. So if you hear me with the mugs and slurping tea, that's what I'm doing to get through the sessions today.
You do sound a lot better than you sounded leading up to this. That cold was trying to take you out a little bit. So
yeah, it was. And you know that's the downside to these things is, the energy level doesn't quite come back. So one thing I hate about having autoimmune illnesses is you just don't bounce back. So it's literally been working from bed, but I'm glad I've gotten a lot of good sleep. I've had some crazy dreams, but a lot of good sleep. Nothing
some sleep
worth
that
sharing.
You probably really needed. You probably really needed this rest. And I don't know, them dreams you have when you sick be wild. I don't wish them on nobody. That is them sick
I had a
dreams
fight with my husband. I've heard of people saying that. I've never had that. I had a fight with my husband in my dream. That was wild.
Wow.
Yeah, I got on him about something, and I had some crazy dreams about different friends and folks I hadn't seen. I've had some crazy dreams, but nothing worth remembering as far as good K-pop, K-drama, K-idol dreams. Nobody worth mentioning. So, how are you doing?
Your husband, I guess, except your husband, but okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we were fighting, so that's why I'm disqualifying all of that. And and the funny thing was when I woke up and I was like, okay, you cannot be mad at him for what happened in this dream.
No.
It wasn't anything like major bad or anything, but I've heard of those women waking up and getting mad at their husbands for something that happened in a dream. And I'm like, no, not happening. No. But anyway, how was your week? How are you doing?
My week has been fine. Nothing too extremely busy, so that was good. I am recovering from a little period of a little bit of autistic burnout I was on the verge of, and I rested last week, so that helped me not fall too deep into that. So
good.
Things are looking pretty good right now.
That is wonderful to hear. I do find that to be one of the wild things when we, as I'm learning more about neurodivergence, and I was attending a summit this week for ADHD women, and it was just interesting to hear about our energy levels and things like that get burned so much because, especially when our ADHD, I shouldn't just say ADHD, when our neurodivergence in general is not managed, how much energy that takes, which you've talked about, how exhausted you were at the end of a school day, so how much energy that takes. And then on top of that, you add in being sick and it takes energy to get better and all these different things. And I'm just like, all the things. We've got some exciting things to talk about today. At least I found them exciting and intriguing. Because as we go through talking about neurodivergence and all of its various complexities, we want to make sure that not only are we familiar with all of the terms that are used within our community, or generally used, I should say, within our community, but that our audience who might be new to the neurodivergent world or new to supporting those who are neurodivergent also are aware of some of the terms that they may hear and get a better understanding of what that means. And also, too, the main thing that I want to point out is that There is no word, no label, no whatever that defines us. We get to define ourselves for ourselves, right? And so while these are terms that are used within our community, that doesn't mean that that's all you are. It is not something to keep you locked in a box and in a cage. It's actually designed to give you a key to be free and to be who you are. So just wanted to point that part out. With that being said, let's talk about the main terms that often come up: neurodivergent, neurotypical, neurodiversity. Which one would you like to take on, darling?
Let's take on, I think, maybe the concept of neurodiversity first, because I think it's a little bit broader and it
Mm-hmm.
encompasses the two other ones. It's interesting. So, doing some research on it, it was a concept that was sort of coined by a sociologist named Judy Singer in the 1990s. And the perspective is a little bit different, maybe, than how neurodivergence is sort of framed a lot of times. And from looking at it again, I actually think it's a little bit closer to how you look at it, which might be why we're always kind of like slightly different in how we view a particular topic. Because the perspective is that neurodivergence are just neurological differences, and seeing them as maybe just natural variations of the human genome. So just biological differences happening from a neurological perspective, as opposed to it being a disorder. And so neurodiversity would refer to the fact that there are both neurodivergent and neurotypical people in the world, and that in itself constitutes neurodiversity.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, when I think of neurodiversity, for me, it encompasses every aspect of being neurodivergent. So what I mean by that is it's not just those of us that are like ADHD or ADD or autistic. It includes all of those that might fall under other categories, such as Tourette syndrome or OCD or things like that. I was doing a little bit of research. I just realized I have a habit of saying things like that. I'm gonna have to work on that. Anyway, squirrel moment. I was doing a little bit of research earlier, particularly on the Cleveland Clinic website, which I have a great deal of respect for. And they were identifying a number of different, what they call conditions that are connected to being neurodivergent. And there were things on that list I hadn't even heard of before. Rare kind of either neurological gene anomalies, things like that. So for me, neurodiversity really is encompassing all of those things under one umbrella of being like neurodivergent. It's a diversity of how we think. It's just like there's a difference, like in my mind, of being Black and the black diaspora, because being Black, I identify being Black as being Black American. But we also have those that are in the Caribbean. You also have those that are in Latin American countries. You have those that are from Africa, various parts of Africa, those that are Black in Europe. So the diaspora is kind of like neurodiversity to me. So it's encompassing all of us. Whereas if I were to say that I'm Black, then it's targeting in on one specific aspect of. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I do think, though, that the concept of neurodiversity, it does include the wide variety of conditions or whatever we want to call them that fall under being neurodivergent, in addition to neurotypical people. So it's a combination of all of it together that represents the full concept of neurodiversity. Okay. And that's why I saw something that made it very specific to point out a person is not neurodiverse. A person will be neurodivergent. Right. Neurodiversity happens when you have a mixture of both neurotypical and neurodivergent people happening in one place. And since the world has everybody, that's how it is.
I like that. That's a good way of putting it. And I will start looking at it that way too from now on. And because one of the things that, I told you I'm looking into becoming a coach, and I did not want to just be an ADHD coach for women of color. I wanted to make sure that I could embrace the entire community, learn about the entire community, and then also to use that as a way of helping corporations and others to better understand how to work with us rather than against us. As I was doing some research into becoming a coach so that I wouldn't just be an ADHD coach, but be a coach as it relates to the entire community, there are certifications out there for neurodiversity. And what I found is that for corporations, they tend to prefer neurodiversity versus just being honed in on one particular type of neurodivergence. So what was interesting to me, though, was that even though the vast majority of corporations are now focusing on being ADHD inclusive, some of them have run from neurodiversity because of the diversity aspect of it, because they don't understand what that means, of course. And they want to throw everything under one umbrella. But there's opportunity out there for education in regards to what neurodiversity is, and then specifically how to work with those that are neurodivergent within that entire community. So what you're saying to me completely resonates. And that's what started getting me to start thinking a little bit differently from what I was defining as neurodiversity. And so, it's a growth process. It's what we learn. And it's also learning how others, I guess, may or may not interpret us and our community, and where unfortunately we have the work of educating them on how to work with us and the proper ways to, or proper terminology to use. And I say unfortunately because we all know, as women of color, we are tired of educating others about us and our people and our cultures, and that we're not the Rosetta Stones or everything.
Just everything.
So that's why I said the unfortunate part. But then in a way, it's also, I also turn it around and look at it as a privilege and a blessing, because anytime I can educate someone who truly wants to understand and is willing to take information in and become an ally, that is a privilege. When I have to educate you and it's willful ignorance, that's when it's exhausting for me.
Yeah. I would argue that if someone's showing some willful ignorance, your job is now done. You don't have to keep going. And maybe that way you could avoid some of that exhaustion, to recognize when that's what's happening and say, oh, I don't have to keep this conversation. You're not actually interested in learning anything. You just want to say some stuff. You're not finna just say stuff to me. What I look like? That's not what we here for. That's no.
You are so good at your emotional regulation. I'm working on it.
Oh man, speaking of struggling to regulate emotions, let's get into neurodivergence and what that word actually means. So that word is typically to describe people whose brain functions diverge from what society considers typical. That can include autism, ADHD, also dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, all these different sorts of things. Other ones that I'm sure I am missing as I'm trying to list off different things that I'm just aware of. All of those things are encompassed in that term neurodivergent. It's important to note that part of what that definition has is it diverges from what society considers typical, because the whole thing is based on a lot of social constructs that were just created by people, right?
Yep.
It goes into culture, and that also goes into why neurodivergence is going to look different and feel different depending on where you live, because there's already so many other cultural and societal implications that go into that.
Exactly. And the other thing too is, just to add on to that, is that research shows that many of us who are neurodivergent also have what are called comorbidities, which means other health issues or mental health situations, conditions, issues that are tied into our ADHD or our neurodivergence, whatever that is, ADHD, ASD, whatever. And what's interesting about that is that because there's so many overlapping symptoms, it makes it harder to get down to the crux of the problem, which 9 times out of 10 is the fact that you're neurodivergent, versus that it's just this health condition. And so when we're talking about that our brains are functioning differently, again, that's where like I talked about earlier, the exhaustion comes in. I did not realize why I was always so overly exhausted when I would have a fibro flare or something else is coming. And that's because my brain is fighting between, ma'am, you want me to put energy into getting you better. And you also want me to put energy into thinking and functioning and trying to regulate your emotions and trying to remember all the stuff you forgot to remember and remembering the stuff you forgot. What's going on here? And so that's kind of like at the bottom of that. So neurodivergent really is just what it comes down to is how your brain is wired. And I was listening to an expert the other day that was saying we're all wired differently to think. Your brain is almost like a unique fingerprint. So we're all wired differently regardless. It's just that there is a group of folks, the quote unquote neurotypical, which we'll talk about in a moment, that tend to do things one way. And all of us out here that are neurodivergent, we're off doing everything our own way and creating this bright, beautiful, colorful canvas. You know, I call us, we're the Jackson Pollocks of the world. We're just everywhere. But we create.
That's you. That's just you. That's everywhere.
But
sorry,
what I
you made that way too easy. You made it too easy. I couldn't let it go.
Forget you, man. But what I mean by that is that we have such unique ways of thinking and seeing things that whether it drives us to be better organizationally and better with systems, whether it drives our creativity, whatever it is, we have a beautiful world over here in this whole neurodivergent atmosphere. It is absolutely beautiful. It's chaotic for some of us, and it's sensory overload for the rest. But because our brains are wired differently, when we get together and work, much like you and I, we go right where to our strengths are, and it makes this whole beautiful picture. It's the everybody else that doesn't get that. One of the experts today in that conference was saying that we have to bend the world to our will. So what it made me think about was in the movie The Matrix, where they were talking about the spoon, and is the spoon bending or is the world around the spoon bending? And so when we look at it that way and we think of it that way, we can help others to, what she was saying is basically when we understand how our brains work when we're neurodivergent, and that it's why we're all wired differently. But when we recognize how our individual brain works, when we see what our interests are, where our energies lie, then we can then turn around and shape things differently to fit us in our world. Her whole talk, I have to talk to you about that separately offline, and we'll come back to it a little bit and some future episodes. I took a lot of great notes on that because it was powerful, especially in helping us to recognize we are probably living someone else's aspirations or living the guidance and direction other people gave us, and it's not fitting us naturally. She said it's like fitting an uncomfortable pair of pants. You can wear them, but that doesn't mean that you want to wear them. So anyway, that was kind of a thought. We'll come back to that in some future episodes because I felt that was worth diving into.
Cool. I think you lost me a little bit.
I probably did.
There.
I got a little abstract, that's okay. And that's not your thing. I'm sorry. Next time I will have a diagram with black and white on it so you can.
I was about to say that diagram better be bullet points because I do not do pictures.
Yes, bullet points.
I forget those a lot. Okay. And then lastly, in that group of terms used to describe people, neurotypical, we use that word a lot. Essentially, that is the word to refer to those people whose brains function within what society defines as typical. Something else interesting to note, a person can be neurotypical and maybe sometimes display some neurodivergent traits and vice versa, right? So it's not if you one, you absolutely never experience anything of the other. Mm-hmm. It's more of like, it's not what you do sometime, but what you do all the time, right?
Right.
What is the pattern happening, existing for you on a day-to-day basis? Yes. And that is kind of how you can figure out maybe where you fit in with this.
Exactly. I think of it as we're the left-handed people in a right-handed world.
Nothing is set up for you. to
Nothing
be
is set up for you.
to
Nothing.
be left-handed. It's
And
not set up for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I had never thought about that before, really. I mean, I had friends that were lefties or southpaws, but my youngest sister-in-law was lefty. And I noticed in observing her how much of a challenge a lot of things were in her trying to just do things naturally day to day we take for granted. And even my father-in-law said, like, when you go into a building, like, you know, if you go into like a movie theater or something like that, unless it's directed that way, he goes, don't go to the right, go to the left. He says, everybody goes to the right. Why? Because we're conditioned to go to the right. And most of the time, if you go to the left, you're going to have less lines, less seats, you know, less seats are taken, you know, different things like that. So I did a non-scientific experiment around that. And I was like, you know, and he's absolutely right. When I started going to the left, I didn't have to wait as long to get to a cashier or whatever the case may be. It's just, it's interesting. And that's all because the world wasn't built for lefties. And also our brains get conditioned to go to the right for everything. So it's the same thing when we're talking about our neurodivergence. We're the lefties in a right-handed world. The world was not built and designed for us, nor does it think like us.
And if you want to know what it feels like, and you are not a neurodivergent person, if you are neurotypical and you are right-handed, go live your whole day trying to pick up some left-handed scissors and try to do anything with everything designed for left-handed people. Try to do something with your left hand that you usually don't do. And that's pretty much what it feels like.
Because most of us are
to
not
go about life as a neurodivergent person.
I was just going to say, just pick up a pair of scissors and try to cut out a picture like the kids do in school. Just pick up a pair of scissors that are made for right-handers and try to cut with your left hand. That is what it's like. Yeah.
Yup. Anyway, now that we've had that little piece of information about how we feel every day, let's talk about some of these other terms.
That just exhausted me even more.
You can't get tired yet, girl. We still got more to go.
All right, so let's talk about these other common terms. What you got for us?
Okay, so the first one I got here is one that we've used several times before. We've even kind of gone into it in a previous episode, but that is the term masking. You will hear those in the neurodivergent community use this word often. Masking is defined as the act of hiding or suppressing neurodivergent traits to fit into neurotypical expectations. Something especially heavy for women and people of color, since they often face racialized stereotypes on top of neurodivergent stigma. So to put that simply, we already have people looking at us funny. We already are fighting against stuff by being a woman of color. Whatever color you may be, you'll probably get various different stereotypes assigned to you. You have that on top of your brain being wired differently, so you don't do things the way a neurotypical person maybe would do them. It's like double on you. And so usually masking is the act that you engage in to kind of counteract that stigma, counteract the uncomfortableness that comes from it, hoping that you can just get through your day and seem as typical as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, we try to fight the angry Black woman trope. So we smile. Well, some of us smile. And we say hi when we're walking in the hallways, and we're always pleasant and this and that. And I realized that even though I come from California where everybody smiles and says hi to each other, in the workplace, I got very conditioned to do that because that stigma was implied upon me, that if I wasn't smiling or if I wasn't talking in a meeting, I must be upset. I wasn't, contributing or whatever the case may be. And when you're the one of, it's worse. And so I reclaimed my smile, and I choose to smile because I think it's one of my best assets. And I think it's one way to break down barriers with people when I want to meet them. And I smile genuinely, but I realized where it started from, the foundation of that. So over the last several years, I've been in the process of reclaiming aspects of myself that got conditioned otherwise, I guess. And so for us, when it comes to masking is a way for us to protect ourselves, protect a portion of ourselves, perceptions, to manage perceptions, if you will, and other things, to lessen the burden that we are carrying, so we think. And it really isn't. It's just adding to it. It's like swallowing the microaggressions and going, it's okay. It's just a small pill when it's actually the size of, an elephant. But you go, but I'm going to swallow it. It's all good. So yeah, masking is a really big deal in our community, and especially for women of color.
And the thing about masking too is that it's sort of like a learned behavior, probably from the input that you got over and over again, but it doesn't come without consequence. And by consequence, I mean an
Mm-hmm.
impact to mostly your mental health,
Mm,
because you're pretty much pretending to be a different person every single day. That takes effort and work. Even if you do it unconsciously, like you're not even really thinking about it, there is still effort being put in on your part to do that every day. And it can put a real strain on you, and it can be really, really hard to
yeah.
manage the results of having a pattern of masking. And I say that as a person who did that for a very long time and can look back and see various periods of even times that I thought was depression was actually burnout and exhaustion
Mm-hmm.
from masking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I wrote a poem when I was like 13 and 14 years old about wearing masks, but I was writing it from the aspect of trauma and not realizing that neurodivergence and trauma go hand in hand with each other. And in fact, one can mask the other, so to speak. And not knowing that that's a part of what I was doing in my life was masking over a lot of different things, including part of my neurodivergence that I didn't even know that I had. So it's challenging, it's heavy, it's weighty. And hopefully through the process of listening to our show, the experts that we'll have on, the knowledge that we'll share and the resources, we can all start working through that, because like you said, it is a learned behavior. And unfortunately with learned behaviors, they become so deeply ingrained, and it takes time to to try to patch over them, or to try, and I know patch is not exactly the best word, but I'm visualizing something in my head that's like a deep groove. So what do you have to do? You have to start filling it in, and to get it back to a good level, a solid level that's worth working from. And so it takes time to do that. And if you're late diagnosed, if you're undiagnosed, that makes it even more challenging to do.
And the thing about masking too, thinking about it, is the more you come to understand yourself and however your neurodivergence looks, and the more you decide, oh, no, I'm fine with it, the less you'll mask. I have seen many people online be like, I feel like I got more autistic. I feel like I got more of this. And I said these words. I actually had a therapy session recently because I was like, I'm scared. Am I getting depressed, or was I a little burned out? Turns out, a little burned out. And I was like, I feel like I have never felt more autistic in my life than as of recent.
Wow.
It's like I worked through trauma and things, and now suddenly I'm way more aware of some of like the needs I have surrounding it. And of course, dear therapist, she said, yeah, that's kind of how that goes. And you probably aren't masking anymore because you realize how exhausting it is. So you're just like, I'm taking this off, and oh well. And now you're just more aware of what's going on. And I was like, wow. So masking I almost feel like it's a defense mechanism
Mm-hmm.
that you pick up so that you
Mm-hmm.
can, for lack of a better word, survive
Yep.
in whatever kind of society you're living in. But once you realize you don't have to do that, you will probably do it a lot less.
Yeah. It's funny because I was having a conversation the other day, in fact, yesterday, with my mom, and we were talking about our last episode. And I said, I know that oftentimes I say, well, that's my ADHD, or whatever. And I said, I say it out loud for two reasons. One, so I can become more aware of what I'm doing that's connected to how my brain is working and functioning. And then I don't feel so bad about doing something like dropping, a ton of stuff on the floor. And I'm like, okay, that's my brain is not connecting right now. And that's what's happening. The other reason why I say things out loud is because I'm trying to find ways to educate you and my husband on why I'm doing certain things the way I'm doing them, or why I may be acting a certain way. So there are some times where, like I said before in one of our previous episodes, no, I'm just being lazy. I just don't feel like doing nothing. And I have to distinguish that from, no, this is your ADHD burnout kicking in here, and you really do need to rest and reset. Right. And so she understood that. And I was grateful for that. But it's one of those things of that, as we do start to learn to accept, like you said, more of how our brain is wired, we start to feel more comfortable with who we are, because this is who we are. Mm-hmm. And it's a part of our learning self-love. And I think sometimes what holds us back, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but part of what holds us back from having that self-love, just deal with me, it's a squirrel moment. But seriously, I was just thinking about that part of what holds us back from learning to really love ourselves or loving ourselves thoroughly and completely are not just self-limiting beliefs, but things that have been told to us that cause us to develop certain self-limiting beliefs, or things that we've had to do to prove to be acceptable to other people and to prove to be normal. Or, it's like, like you were saying, because it still plays over in my mind when you were like, yeah, well, I learned what to say from TV, and then I would go say those things in person, and everybody's like, what are you? Then this rejection comes up, and you're like, well, why are you rejecting me? Now you got to go deal with that, and you got to figure that part out, and if you have rejection sensitivity dysmorphia, now you've gone down a spiral that you're trying to pull. And so I think part of that whole learning to love ourselves completely is also learning to accept and love our neurodivergence. And I think that's one reason why I am very vocal about it. I am very fiercely protective of anybody that has neurodivergence, or if I hear things that are not said properly. That's why also my sense of justice, which is also part of our neurodivergence. But, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm learning to love myself, and I am not going to accept anyone putting down that aspect of myself. I've had to deal with that enough in my life with different things, or hiding enough about myself in my life just so I could be accepted by the world, or to try to be liked, or to fit into the mold or the constructs that people have put out there. Not doing it. So this is part of loving me, and you're not going to take that part away. You're not going to minimize that.
Alrighty then, friend. She is actively sipping tea, in case y'all didn't know.
Just saying. I'm sorry. I know I went off for a second, but I feel some type of way.
Well, listen, the word squirrel is in the name of the show. And if you did not squirrel every episode, would this be the same podcast? Probably not. So, squirreling is your job, and I'm here to watch. So, we've talked about masking. So when we say masking and suppression of the traits, you might be like, okay, well, what are the traits being suppressed? And there are 3 examples that came to my mind. Also, when I was doing some research, things that kind of came up. So we can talk about those 3 big ones: stimming, the act of info dumping, and sort of the sensory experiences. So sensory overload or sensory seeking. Now, your face did something very interesting, so I can't wait till we talk about info dumping. I want to touch on stimming right quick.
Yeah.
So when we say stimming, what does that mean? It refers to self-stimulating behaviors. So these are repetitive movements or sounds that help to regulate emotions or sensory experiences. So they can be things like rocking, humming, tapping. Each person's stim can look different, and it can be used either to produce a sensory experience, because you're like seeking to feel this, or you're trying to combat a different sensory experience and trying to maybe reduce how it's making you feel. I do want to point this out. Everybody stims.
Yeah.
Neurotypical people also stim. So that person who will not stop tapping their foot, that's a stim. That person may not be neurodivergent, but it is a form of stimming, just to give an idea of like what that might look like. And it's not something that is only happening in neurodivergent people, but it happens more. It's like a more pronounced, probably.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you clarified that, because for many people, their knowledge of stimming or stimming behavior is primarily associated with those on the autism spectrum who might be nonverbal, and it's normally over exaggerated, if you will, when you see it in the media, like in movies and TV shows and stuff. And it's as if the person also does not have a measure of intelligence that is going along with what they're doing. So they're just flailing their arms or rocking uncontrollably. That is not, generally speaking, how stimming is for most neurodivergent people. Not saying that it can't be that way, but neurodivergence and intelligence do not have a connection to each other. You can have a high IQ, extremely high IQ, and be neurodivergent. So let me just going to put that out there too. But stimming is a way for it. It's almost like, for instance, if you have experienced trauma, a lot of us that have experienced, especially childhood trauma, we will rock as self-soothing. So when we're talking about stimming in a way where we're trying to help regulate emotions or sensory experiences, we could be trying to calm ourselves. We could be trying to soothe something that's happening, an emotion. Maybe we're feeling some sort of way. So stimming is going to cause us to activate our thoughts. Like sometimes I will stim before I get started in working. I've noticed that about myself. And I'll be like, great, now I'm ready to go. Why? Because now I have something, everything's coming together. It's making sense and I got to go while the energy is firing. Other times I will stim when I get nervous or when I need to kind of calm myself a little bit, or to kind of help refocus my brain.
Yeah. So I looked back on my life as both a child and as an adult, and I realized things that were stems that did not occur to me. Things that I recall my parents when I was younger being like, what's our kid doing? What is that about? Like, not fully joking. I would do little things with my hands sometimes, and my parents truly were like, is it possible our kid has Tourette's? Is that maybe something that's going on? So I'll give an example. I remember it might have either been from music class or being in band, or I took violin a little bit when I was a kid, so maybe from that, but we were learning about like how you can count the beats in a measure for music. So they would teach us how to count them. So then I started counting them, and then I started counting the beats in conversations.
Wow.
I'm basically counting syllables. That's basically what I was doing. But I'm doing that in my head, and I'm also doing it on my hands. And I'm doing this everywhere. We could be at Walmart, I'm walking around, and I'm doing this. So my parents are looking like, what's she doing? Is she okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. I also would do this thing where I would blink a lot. I would blink like a lot. Now I've also got terrible allergies, so I'm chronically dry. I'm dry right now, y'all. Like this is a thing. But I would think I might pick up something that it had like an actual maybe purpose to it. Like I'm blinking a lot because my eyes are dry. But then it would become like a habit. I would like keep doing it. So my parents are looking at me like, our kid will not stop blinking and doing this thing with her hands, and they don't know what I'm doing. They don't know I'm just like blinking, probably because it did become a habit and it kind of like felt nice to just kind of do it. I'm also probably doing it when we're out and about. There might be some sensory input coming to me that feels like a lot, but I don't even realize that's what it is. So I'm kind of just like, okay, well, this is happening. I can hear this people talking. I can hear this thing. I'll just count the beats in that while I kind of walk around with my parents around this store. Did not occur to me until I was an adult that that's the whole thing that had happened.
So I just realized today at my big age that is a form of stimming for me. I will also, because I did music and I also did choir and all that stuff, you count the beats and you go tiri tiri ta, all that kind of stuff. I do the same thing when I am listening to people sometimes, also because I do sign language. So sometimes I would try to sign to a rhythm or sign to, but I just realized I didn't know that was stimming. I do some of the same things sometimes. Wow.
Other things. So I don't know. You've known me for a while. You may or may not have noticed. I clear my throat a lot. I'll clear my throat a lot. I sniff a lot. Again, got a lot of allergies and stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think every time I clear my throat, I needed to. I think sometimes it's just a form of stimming, which I did read can be a form of stimming. It's like just seeking some sort of sensation of some sort.
You know what you just did to my ADHD brain?
What's
Let
that?
me clear my throat. And I was,
That was our moment of the day.
because that's how my brain operates. Song lyrics,
Yeah.
movie quotes, da 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 da. And it's like, and I'm sitting there, and as soon as you said that, I was like, da 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 da. And I was like, pay attention. Pay attention. But it's I think for me, because I do have stigmatisms in my eyes, but I notice when I record video that I do blink quite a bit. And I was like, I could probably never be on TV because I blink entirely too much. And I was like, maybe it's because of the stigmatisms, but now you got me thinking. So basically what it comes down to is we kind of unconsciously come up with these things that help to either help us feel something or help us to minimize how we're feeling about something. I don't know if it's necessarily stimming. I'm going to kind of assume that it is, because when I chew gum, I can start popping gum and I can get into a rhythm and not even think about it. And
That
just go.
sounds like a stim to me, friend. That
Yep,
sounds
especially
like a
when
stim
I'm
to me.
especially when I'm focused and I'm working. Yeah, I can go there. And I can pop to a beat if I wanted to. If I'm paying attention, I can start popping to a beat. I know that sounds really crazy, but I can. But when I'm working, I'll sit there and my mom be like, can you please hurry up and finish working on whatever it is you're working on, because you are killing that gum. I mean, like, give me 10 more minutes. But
I just realized too, we just been saying the word stimming, and if you are somebody who is neurodivergent, you kind of already know this, but if you're listening, because maybe you're supporting someone else or you're just curious, stimming is spelled stimming.
Oh,
like stim, yes. Like in stimulating, stimming. I just thought about that because it could sound like we saying something else. So I just figured I would clarify that right quick.
What does that have to do with the flower stem?
Yep. So I'm like, nope, not that stem.
Nope,
stem with an I.
Exactly.
Thanks for squirreling with us. Have questions? Want to share your experience or other feedback privately with us? You can email us at bgbsquirrel@gmail.com. That's bgbsquirrel@gmail.com.